Morocco, mountainous country of western North Africa that lies directly across the Strait of Gibraltar from Spain. The traditional domain of indigenous peoples now collectively known as Berbers, self-named Amazigan, singular, and Mazayat. Morocco has been subject to extensive migration and has long been the location of urban communities that were originally settled by peoples from outside the region. Controlled by Carthage from an early date, the region was later the westernmost province of the Roman Empire. Following the Arab conquest of the late 7th century CE, the broader area of North Africa came to be known as the Maghreb, and the majority of its people accepted Islam. Subsequent Moroccan kingdoms enjoyed political influence that extended beyond the coastal regions, and in the 11th century the first native Amazigh dynasty of North Africa, the Almoravids, gained control of an empire stretching from Andalusian Spain to parts of sub-Saharan Africa. Attempts by Europeans to establish permanent footholds in Morocco beginning in the late 15th century were largely repulsed, but the country later became the subject of great power politics in the 19th century. Morocco was made a French protectorate in 1912 but regained independence in 1956. Today it is the only monarchy in North Africa. Although the country is rapidly modernizing and enjoys a rising standard of living, it retains much of its ancient architecture and even more of its traditional customs. Morocco's largest city and major Atlantic Ocean port is Casablanca, an industrial and commercial center. The capital, Rabat, lies a short distance to the north on the Atlantic coast. Other port cities include Tangier, on the Strait of Gibraltar, Agadir, on the Atlantic, and El Hoceima, on the Mediterranean Sea. The city of Fes is said to have some of the finest souks, or open-air markets, in all of North Africa. Scenic and fertile, Morocco well merits the praise of a native son, the medieval traveler Ibn Battuta, who wrote that it is the best of countries, for in it fruits are plentiful, and running water and nourishing food are never exhausted. Land. Morocco borders Algeria to the east and southeast, Western Sahara to the south, the Atlantic Ocean to the west, and the Mediterranean Sea to the north. It is the only African country with coastal exposure to both the Atlantic Ocean and the Mediterranean Sea. Its area, excluding the territory of Western Sahara, which Morocco controls, is slightly larger than the U.S. state of California. Two small Spanish enclaves, Ceuta and Melilla, are situated on the country's northern coast. Relief of Morocco. Most of Morocco lies at high elevations, averaging about 2,600 feet above sea level. Two chains of mountains divide eastern from Atlantic Morocco. The Rif Mountains in the north form a buffer along the Mediterranean coastline, whereas the Atlas Mountains create a barrier across the center. The two parts of the country are connected by the narrow Taza Gap in the northeast as well as by roads that follow older traditional routes. The Atlas and Rif ranges were formed during the Paleogene and Neogene periods by the folding and uplifting of sediment that had accumulated in the Tethys Sea, which, at that time, bordered the northern coast of Africa. The Rif Mountains are geologically part of the Cordilleras reaching southward from the Iberian Peninsula of Europe, from which Africa was separated only after the Neogene period. The crescent-shaped range rises abruptly from a narrow Mediterranean coastal plain. Most of the limestone peaks in the Rif Mountains surpass 4,900 feet and rise to 8,058 feet at Mount Tidorine. The Atlas Mountains comprise three distinct chains. The High Atlas, 460 miles long, begins as small hills at the edge of the Atlantic, rises rapidly to more than 6,500 feet, and reaches 13,665 feet, 165 meters, at Mount Tabqal, Morocco's highest point. The Middle Atlas trends away from the High Atlas in a northerly direction, rising to 10,958 feet at its crest. The Anti-Atlas extends southwestward from the High Atlas to the Atlantic. East of the Rif and Atlas ranges is the Mologa Basin, a semi-arid lowland created by the eroding force of the Mologa River. Farther east are the high plateaus of eastern Morocco, which lie roughly between 3,900 and 4,250 feet, 1,201, 300 meters, in elevation and are extensions of landforms in neighboring Algeria. The arid regions to the south and southeast of the Atlas constitute the northwestern limit of the Sahara, whereas a narrow transitional band at the base of the mountains is called the Pre-Sahara. Atlantic Morocco consists of plains formed of relatively fine sediments and plateaus of coarser deposits. The Sibor River Basin, which lies in the northwest between the Rif Mountains and a line running roughly from Rabat to Fes, is a large alluvial plain. Its agricultural heart is known as the Garb Plain. South of the Rabat-Fes line, between the Atlas and the Atlantic Ocean, are a series of high plains known collectively as the Moroccan Plateau. These include the Sas Plain near Fes and Metz, the Tadla Plain to the northeast of Marrakech, the House Plain west of Marrakech, and the Bratchaout, Dukala, and Abda Plains south of Casablanca. Between the High Atlas and Anti-Atlas ranges is the Sou River Valley. Morocco's coastline is regular and has few natural harbors. Before modern ports were constructed, sandbars and rocky reefs offshore made navigation difficult. Drainage. Morocco's mountains capture significant amounts of rain and snow on their windward slopes from storms coming in off the North Atlantic and give rise to numerous perennial watercourses. Indeed, the country has the most extensive stream network in North Africa. Most streams arise either on the western slopes of the Atlas Mountains or on the southern slopes of the Rif Mountains and flow westward to the Atlantic Ocean. The Ségou is some 280 miles long and has the largest volume of any Moroccan river. With its tributaries, the Ségou accounts for almost half of Morocco's surface water resources. The Dra, which rises in the High Atlas at the confluence of the Dads and the Yemeni, is Morocco's longest river, approximately 685 miles in length. All but the head streams and upper course are usually dry. At 345 miles long, the El Arbaia is another significant river, flowing from the Middle Atlas to the Atlantic. The Malouya is the only major river flowing to the Mediterranean Sea. It originates on the eastern slopes of the Middle Atlas and flows about 320 miles to its mouth, which lies near the Algerian frontier. The northern slopes of the Rif are drained by several short streams that also empty into the Mediterranean. Several minor streams originate on the dry eastern slopes of the High Atlas and flow into the Sahara. These include the Gir, the Reris, and the Ziz. Although their volume is small, they have cut deep gorges. Since the 1930s, Morocco's streams have progressively been dammed for irrigation, hydroelectricity, and flood control. Soils. A dark clay marl soil known as tears, which is found on the Chouat, Dukala, and Abda plains, produces good yields of wheat and barley when precipitation is sufficient and can retain enough moisture to support summer pasture. Hanria, a light reddish siliceous soil found throughout the Sas plain surrounding Metz and Fes, supports productive vineyards and can also produce good cereal yields, though it has poor moisture retention. Das is the main soil type of the Ségou Basin. A silt-rich alluvial soil, it provides the foundation for much of Morocco's modern irrigated agriculture. Other major soil types, less suitable for agriculture, are Amel, a sandy soil found in the Marmora forest region east of Rabat and along much of the northern coast, and Haroucha, a rocky soil found throughout Morocco's semi-arid regions. Climate of Morocco. Most of Morocco north of Western Sahara, particularly along the coasts, experiences a typical Mediterranean climate, with mild wet winters and hot dry summers. The rainy season generally extends from October to April. Torrential downpours occasionally produce devastating floods, but overall several factors act to reduce the country's rainfall. Morocco is on the southern margins of the mid-latitude tract of frontal storm systems that regularly traverse the North Atlantic. As a result, rainfall levels are relatively low and gradually decrease from north to south. High-pressure ridges, moreover, periodically develop offshore during the rainy season, shifting storms to the north. Drought results when these ridges persist for extended periods. The cold Canary Current off the western shores also induces atmospheric stability and further decreases the potential for precipitation. In the broad coastal lowlands, average annual precipitation diminishes progressively from about 32 inches on the northern Garb Plain to less than 8 inches in the Sou Valley. Farther south, beyond the Anti-Atlas, semi-arid conditions quickly fade into desert. Elevation strongly influences this prevailing pattern, however, with significantly greater amounts of precipitation occurring in the mountains. The Central Rif, for example, receives more than 80 inches of precipitation annually, and even the High Atlas, much farther south, receives some 30 inches. Snow is common at approximately 6,500 feet, and the snowpack lingers in the highest elevations until late spring or early summer. Morocco's mountains create a significant rain shadow, directly east of the mountains, where in the lee of the prevailing winds, desert conditions begin abruptly. In the lowlands near the coast, summer heat is reduced by cool onshore breezes. Average daily summer temperatures in the coastal cities range from 64 to 82 F. In the interior, however, daily highs frequently exceed 95 F. In late spring or summer, the shark, a hot, dusty wind from the Sahara, can sweep over the mountains into the lowlands, even penetrating the coastal cities. Temperatures rise dramatically, often reaching 105 F. If crops have not been harvested, damage can be extensive from the desiccating effects of the shark. In winter, the marine influence again moderates temperatures in the coastal regions. Average daily winter temperatures range from 46 to 63 F. Away from the coast, temperatures drop significantly, occasionally dipping below the freezing point. Plant and animal life. Outside the desert areas, the vegetation of Morocco resembles that of the Iberian Peninsula. Extensive forests are still found in the more humid mountainous areas, with cork oak, evergreen oak, and deciduous oak on the lower slopes and fir and cedar at higher elevations, particularly in the Middle Atlas. In drier mountain areas, open forests of thuja, juniper, and Aleppo and maritime pine are common. East of Rabat is the extensive cork oak Marmora forest. Eucalyptus, originally from Australia, was introduced by French authorities during the colonial period for reforestation. Since independence, the Moroccan government has established several large plantations of this tree surrounding the Marmora forest. In the rugged highlands south of Essaouira, vast open forests of argan are found. Unique to southwestern Morocco, this tree has a hard fruit that produces a prized cooking oil. In Morocco, as is common throughout the western Mediterranean region, centuries of human activity have considerably altered the natural vegetation. On many lower mountain slopes, cutting, grazing, and burning the original vegetation have produced an often dense cover of maki, or scrub growth, characterized by various associations of wild olive, mastic tree, kermes oak, arbutus, heather, myrtle, artemisia, cytisus, broom, and rosemary. In the arid interior plains, the dwarf palm, jujube tree, esparto grass, and barberry fig cover vast areas. There is little natural vegetation in the desert areas east of the mountains, although the date palm, introduced to Morocco at a very early period, is extensively cultivated in the desert oases. Large game has been progressively eliminated in Morocco since Roman times, when lions and elephants were still abundant. Both have long since disappeared. Gazelles are still seen occasionally in the south, as are mouflons and fennecs in the Atlas region. With government protection, the Barbary macaque now flourishes in the forests of the Middle Atlas. However, the richest fauna in Morocco today is the bird life. Large migratory birds that sojourn in Morocco include the stork, which picturesquely builds its nests on city ramparts and mosque rooftops, and the flamingo, pelican, and cattle egret. People. Ethnic groups. Morocco is composed mainly of Arabs and Amazighan, or in a mixture of the two. Sizable numbers of Amazighan live mainly in the country's mountainous regions, long areas of refuge for them where they can preserve their language and culture. Some segments of the population are descendants of refugees from Spain who fled from the Reconquista, the Christian reconquest of the Iberian Peninsula in the 15th century. Trade and slavery brought a significant population of sub-Saharan Africans to Morocco, and their descendants now live chiefly in the southern oases and in the larger cities. Jews constituted a fairly large minority until the mid-20th century, when, in the aftermath of the foundation of Israel and the start of the Arab-Israeli conflict, many felt compelled to leave the country. Most emigrated to Israel, Europe, and South and North America. Languages. Arabic, one of the national and official languages of Morocco, is spoken by 2/3 of the population, and modern Standard Arabic is taught in schools. The Amazigh language, known as Tamazight, became an official language in 2011. Having been preserved in Amazigh enclaves, it is spoken by roughly 1/3 of the people. Many Amazighan also speak Arabic, and Tamazight is taught in schools. French is an important secondary language, and Spanish is widely spoken. English is increasingly used as well. Tamazight-speaking inhabitants are divided into 3 ethno-linguistic groups: the Red people of the Rif Mountains, the people of the Middle Atlas, and the people of the High Atlas in the Sioux Valley. While there are differences among these dialects, they are mutually comprehensible. Religion. Islam is the official state religion, and the vast majority of Moroccans are Sunni Muslims of the Malik Rite. The royal house, the Alawite dynasty, has ruled since the 17th century, basing its claim to legitimacy on descent from the Prophet Muhammad. The royal family is revered by Moroccan Muslims because of its prophetic lineage. As in many Islamic countries, Sufism claims adherents, and forms of popular religion, including the veneration of saints and the visitation of tombs, are widely practiced. Moroccan law mandates freedom of religion, but few non-Muslims reside in the country. The country has no indigenous Christian population to speak of, and its Jewish community has dwindled to a few thousand. Economy of Morocco. As is true in many former African colonies, the Moroccan economy remains heavily dependent on the export of raw materials. Also of growing importance to the economy are modern sectors, particularly tourism and telecommunications. Altogether, the modern portion accounts for more than 2/3 of gross domestic product, even though it employs only about 1/3 of the country's workforce. Since the mid-1980s, the Moroccan government has undertaken a vigorous program of privatization and economic reform, encouraged by major international lenders such as the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. Measures have included selling state-owned enterprises, devaluing the currency, and changing pricing policies to encourage local production. In 1999, the Moroccan government set up a loan fund to stimulate growth and competition among small businesses. Morocco's sandy beaches, sunshine, diverse environments, and rich cultural heritage give it outstanding potential for tourism, which the government has been actively developing. Agriculture, forestry, and fishing. Morocco is endowed with numerous exploitable resources. With approximately 33,000 square miles of arable land in its generally temperate Mediterranean climate, Morocco's agricultural potential is matched by few other Arab or African countries. It is one of the few Arab countries that has the potential to achieve self-sufficiency in food production. In a normal year, Morocco produces 2/3 of the grains needed for domestic consumption. The country exports citrus fruits and early vegetables to the European market, its wine industry is developed, and production of commercial crops is expanding. Newer crops such as tea, tobacco, and soybeans have passed the experimental stage, the fertile Gharb plain being favorable for their cultivation. The country is actively developing its irrigation potential that ultimately will irrigate more than 2.5 million acres. Nevertheless, the danger of drought is ever present. Especially at risk are the cereal-growing lowlands, which are subject to considerable variation in annual precipitation. On average, drought occurs in Morocco every third year, creating a volatility in agricultural production that is the main constraint on expansion in the sector. Livestock raising, particularly sheep and cattle, is widespread. Morocco fills its own meat requirements and is also attempting to become self-sufficient in dairy products. Morocco's forests, which cover about 1/10 of its total land area, have substantial commercial value. Morocco satisfies much of its timber needs by harvesting the high-elevation forests in the Middle and High Atlas. Its eucalyptus plantations enable it to be self-sufficient in charcoal, which is used extensively for cooking fuel. Eucalyptus also provides the raw material needed for the country's paper and cellulose industries. Paper pulp is a valuable export as is cork from the country's plentiful cork oak forests. The fishing grounds in the Canary Current off Morocco's west coast are exceptionally rich in sardines, bonito, and tuna, but the country lacks the modern fleets and processing facilities to benefit fully from these marine resources. An important part of a major trade agreement Morocco concluded with the European Union in 1996 concerned fishing rights, by which the EU pays Morocco an annual fee to allow vessels to fish Moroccan waters. Resources and power. With its acquisition of Western Sahara, Morocco came to possess some 2/3 of the world's reserves of phosphates, used for the manufacture of fertilizers and other products. Low world prices for phosphates, however, have hindered production. Other minerals include iron ore and coal, mined for Morocco's domestic use, and barite, manganese, lead, and zinc, which are exported in small quantities. A major weakness in Morocco's resource inventory is its shortage of domestic energy sources. Oil exploration has been disappointing, although the country possesses some natural gas reserves that have been exploited. Its hydroelectric potential is considerable and now being tapped. Morocco must cover the bulk of its growing energy needs through imports, principally crude petroleum, which is refined domestically. Thermal power plants produce much of the country's electricity. Check out us for more videos. Do not forget to subscribe our channel.